Mate. What a sound for a frog to make.
Right?
How are we
Intense.
doing? This is like crazy. It's like a machine gun. Is this another trick? This has got to be a frog.
This is no trick. This is a frog.
This is a frog.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, this is probably my favourite one ever. I love it. You can hear the competition. You can hear how fiercely they want to get those mates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There does sound like there's some other renegade frogs in the background that we can ignore, but
yeah, some slightly rogue ones. So, okay, I think it's quite a big frog. Where are we in this paper? Just trying to look if there's any sort of geographical clue.
No, I'm afraid there's no geographic connection between what we're covering in this episode and this frog. It was one that I just came across and was like, that frog's cool. I'm all about it.
Can I have a clue?
Yes, they are 70 millimeters SVL. They are found
Okay, so that's
in
quite big.
Sort of Southeast Asia, from sort of Brunei all the way over to Myanmar, all the way over to India, actually.
Yeah.
I'll give you another clue. They
Is it the?
they live near the
Go on.
sea.
They live near the sea.
Yeah.
So sand dunes, maybe. Okay, I'm going to go for that crazy purple frog. Is it Hoplobatrachus?
I wish. There's no way those guys sound so competitive, surely.
No,
They probably sound like a
they're
deflating
useless.
balloon.
Yeah.
No, this is the crab-eating frog, aka the mangrove frog, aka the
Okay.
Asian brackish frog, aka
Asian
the
brackish frog?
crab-eating glass frog.
Oh my god.
So it's,
okay. Well,
Fejervarya cancrivora. Yeah, we'll go with that.
oh,
They live in mangroves. They will eat crustaceans, as the name suggests. They can handle brackish water. And they look like sort of bullfrogs, lumpy dark brown bullfrogs is sort of their vibe.
what's the common name?
Crab-eating frog will get you where you're going.
Crab-eating frog.
Yeah.
Wow.
They can
Okay.
handle,
Yeah, they look
can
serious.
handle a bit of seawater.
I didn't know there was a frog that could handle sea water.
Well,
That's
I mean,
bonkers.
it's a salinity as high as 2.8, it says on their Wikipedia page.
Okay. Fejervarya cancrivora. Crab-eating frog.
Yeah. I also love
Wow.
the idea of a frog eating a crab. I don't know why, it just feels slightly wrong.
Hmm.
There's no reason
does
for it to
feel
be
wrong.
wrong.
Well, because it's a soft animal eating a hard animal.
Right.
Doesn't go that way.
No.
Usually the hard animals eat the soft animals.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I'm sure there are crabs that eat these frogs too, but the eternal battle of crab versus frog is going strong across the coasts and mangroves of Southeast Asia, so it seems.
Crabs and frogs have been locked in it for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guessed the purple frog, and I guessed Hoplobatrachus, which isn't even the right scientific name for that frog.
Hoplobatrachus is the
that's
little, what's it, tiger bullfrog genus, isn't it?
from Africa,
Yeah, that's been introduced to Madagascar, yeah. Yeah,
But it's also
Hoplobatrachus
found in-
tigrinus is the one that's on Madagascar, I think.
Oh, okay, so Hoplobatrachus is found in sub-Saharan Africa and southern and southeastern Asia, so it wasn't completely crazy.
I think it's one of the guys that's been spread around because they're quite edible.
Right. But I think they're natively there, because one of them's called the Indian bullfrog.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, crazy. Okay, so yeah, but this isn't that. Yeah, the purple frog is Nasica batrachus. I'm terrible with frog names anyway. I never said otherwise. So, so cool. Okay, nice. So I didn't get it. So it's still 2-2 overall in the grand scheme of things.
The idea you keeping track is absurd.
I'm an insanely competitive man, even when competitions are completely farcical and impossible. So, I mean, the thing is, at this point, if one of us gets a third, it might be the You might win it, you know? Well, in the fullness of time, maybe we'll start getting them regularly. It just doesn't seem like something that's likely to happen.
No, it does not.
Okay. So we're moving on from a species of frog here that eats crabs, to some smelly snakes. Okay, so this is by Freiburger, Miller and Skinner, 2024. Olfactory self-recognition in 2 species of snake, published in Proceedings of the Royal Society B. So,
self-recognition. It's quite a
self-recognition.
Quite a thing to tackle.
Quite a thing to tackle.
I feel like people would classically know about the mirror test, right? This visual test to see if animal can recognize themselves in the mirror. I kind of want to highlight that the mirror test itself is kind of shaky. Kind of really shaky. I'll throw a link to the article I was looking at, but there are lots of different instances where the sort of socialization of people as well as animals can impact their interaction with mirrors, and therefore the evidence for self-recognition. One of the examples was given were gorillas, and gorillas don't do very well with the mirror test. But
they're dumb.
No, they're not dumb. They're embarrassed. Because of the whole eye contact thing in gorillas. So the mirror test, you tend to put a mark on said animal or subject, whoever, and see if they can work, they interact with it, they remove it, whatever.
It has to be somewhere they can't see without a mirror, right? So like on the face.
Yes, exactly. So it works brilliantly for things like chimps, with a species that's sort of social and quite readily... that they will readily sort of groom themselves and groom each other. So if there was something on them, they would happily remove it. You translate that to an animal that's maybe less social or less willing to groom, or in the case of gorillas, maybe embarrassed. So that the example that was given is that they'd be shown the mirror. They wouldn't react in a way that would present obvious evidence of self-recognition, but then they'd go away somewhere else without the mirror and they'd remove the mark elsewhere. So they've gained the information, but they're like, no, I'm not doing it in front of everybody. I'm going to leave. I'll tidy myself somewhere else.
Oh, gorillas, bless them.
Yeah, but it's also they were also highlighting how children, as in human children of different ages, have different success rates depending on the culture the children are raised in, potentially because of this sort of socialization and willingness to exhibit different behaviors in the presence of researchers and in the presence of this test, and differences in sort of interdependence versus independence, and just there's a lot of other aspects muddying how clear the evidence you get from mirror tests are.
Yes,
and that I wanted to bring this up because what we're going to talk about in this paper is a test which is meant to be the sort of equivalent of a mirror test, but for scent. And I think it's sort of important to highlight that even the sort of more accepted method of this mirror test has a whole suite of problems, because you're trying to tackle something potentially quite deep in the mind, which doesn't necessarily reveal itself easily. There's a lot of quite convoluted inference you have to make to get to this idea of self-recognition. So just, it sounds like I'm disparaging the paper before we've even sort of discussed it, and I'm not. It's just wanting to highlight how difficult it is getting at these quite deeply rooted concepts. So it's, you're trying to read someone's mind in a weird kind of way through the use of mirror and stink.
Yeah, It's abstract.
Yeah.
It's really abstract. And even if animals do have a sense of self, it might be different than our sense of self. Like they might have a sense of themselves, but they might not have a sense of themselves existing in a past time, or like, like you can know what your own body is without thinking, oh, my body was over there once. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's
and also demonstrating that in a test that is recognizable in that sort of way. Yes.
Yeah. And so, I think essentially what you're getting at is something which the authors are quite transparent about, is that if an animal can pass the mirror test, it's strong evidence of self-recognition and it indicates the possibility of self-awareness,
right?
A sense of self. However, it's not definitive proof in any way. And if an animal isn't able to pass, that doesn't necessarily mean they don't possess these abilities.
Yes.
And as you say, this is a scent version of it. So they kind of tried to develop a version which is more suited for animals which rely principally on scent, or at least have scent as one of their sort of key senses, rather than vision. Obviously, the visual test is good for humans, because if you stick a dot on us, we navigate by looking around. We can barely smell anything. That's not the case for lots of animals, including reptiles, who mostly navigate by scent. And so the idea of the scent test for animals which navigate by smell to see if they're self-aware essentially involves presenting the subjects with their own scent, either marked or unmarked. So they'll either sully it with something else or they won't, and they'll compare the response of the animal to their scent to the scent of a different species, or a different individual of the same species. Sorry, a different individual of the same species. So they compare the reaction of the animal to their own scent and the scent of the same species but a different individual. And if they spend more time investigating their own scent than they do a similar scent from a different individual, they're considered to have like passed this test. Okay, they're aware that that's their own scent, they're more interested in it, they're spending time investigating it, they've passed the self-awareness test.
Yes.
And obviously, recognizing your own odor in the environment could be a useful cue for an animal. It could suggest that they've, you smell your own smell. It's like, okay, I've marked this territory. I've been here before. I might have crossed this path before.
Sort of
I'm somewhere I had previously been.
Yep.
Yeah. Or even more, if they can smell their own scent, they might recognize that it's been altered in some way, and then they can be interested in that and potentially be concerned about that. Like, okay, I don't smell quite right. That's like another layer to it. And like if we go back to sort of like the mammal test, the visual test, just to give people a flavor of like the animals that have passed this test. One Asian elephant did it once. Manta rays.
One Asian elephant did
Dolphins.
it once. This is the other cool thing, though. Individuality. I think they tested 3 different elephants in that study. 2 of them failed. One of them succeeded, I think.
Yeah.
What does that mean? That those other 2 elephants were dumb? Absolutely not. No, but it's.
I feel like the idea that an elephant doesn't know itself is like mad.
Right.
I'm sure elephants know who they are. I'm like, they are such complex social animals.
Yeah.
They mourn their dead, for God's sake.
Yeah.
Like,
it just highlights the difficulty of translating something from behavior into, a concept. It's
the elephants might just be indifferent.
Yeah.
Or just not care if they have a mark on them.
Well, that was one of the things they brought up. It's like some of these animals are used to seeing marks on them. An elephant covered in mud might not care as much as a very purposefully clean keeping animal. I don't know.
Yeah, and interestingly, cleaner wrasse, they notice it. So cleaner wrasse show this like level of self-awareness. But I mean, they must be an animal which is like really tuned into looking for small spots.
Yeah, maybe
because they're clean.
Yeah, I can't stand this filth on me. I can't have it. I can't abide it.
But also, some of the sort of clever cetaceans, so dolphins and orcas. Also Eurasian magpie that we have here. I was watching one of them in the garden yesterday. But then other species which you'd think weren't, we're sort of clever and sort of social fail. So several species of monkeys have failed, giant pandas have failed, sea lions have failed, and like you said, Ben, with caveats, gorillas have failed. So it's not a be all and end all, but it is, kind of
I think it's a good starting point.
Best
right?
Start.
It's a good starting point. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're looking at self-recognition. We're looking at it in snakes. So we're going to be using the scent test. Snakes have this really advanced vomeronasal system, which they use as their principal sense. So they're tongue flicking all the time. It's essentially a sense of smell. And so, these authors conducted this odor-based self-recognition experiment on 2 species of snake. We had the eastern garter snake, Thamnophis satalis, which is widespread species in America and Canada. Also had royal pythons, Python regius. And so these two species were chosen based on their opposing life history traits, because garter snakes are only active for part of the year, they hibernate communally, and they also get together at denning sites, so they are social. They also like to be in groups when it comes to shelter.
Yep.
So garter snakes are this sort of slightly social snake, and they're also active foragers that cruise around looking for food. Conversely, royal pythons are pretty much the opposite of all of that. They don't hibernate, they're ambush predators, they're from sub-Saharan Africa, and they're probably much less likely to encounter other royal pythons because they don't really congregate. They're generally considered to be much more sort of lone wolves, as it were. Being ambush predators, they're also behaving very differently, where they're just sitting in one place a lot of the time.
Yeah, very different sort of use of space.
Yeah, totally. Although we don't actually know that much about royal pythons' space use in actuality, we just sort of assume a lot of it from their body structure and like where they're found. I would love to see someone do a tracking study on royal pythons.
Yes,
Somebody was trying to organise that.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be so cool. That'd be
That'd be great.
I'd love. Yeah.
If you want to fast track your way to a Herp Highlights episode, just do some research on royal pythons, because people love them. We like them. They're squeaky.
Or pay us to do it.
Or pay us to do it. We'll do it. We'll do it real well. We'll do it great. We'll do a fantastic study. Yeah, we will. We'll crush it. The way these two species were tested to see if they passed the self-recognition test was as follows. Place the individual snake in an arena, present them with different scents, including their own scent or their own scent marked with an added mark odor. The scent of a familiar snake was another one, or the scent of a familiar snake with a marked odor. And then they measured the snake's behavior by counting, first of all, how often they tongue flicked near each scent. So that could be short tongue flicks or long tongue flicks, which are like the more exploratory flicks where they're actually, when the tongue comes out, the tongue goes up and down a lot more times than a long tongue flick.
Yeah.
So it's like a real, hey, what is this I'm smelling type of tongue flick, rather than just I'm just tongue flicking, I'm chilling, like I'm just testing everything. This is like a decided
active investigation tongue flick. Yeah.
I'm really smelling this. And so, they measured all that, looked to see how the snakes were interacting with the different scents. The scents were paired at any given time, so they'd have two to choose from, one either side of the experimental arena. They got the scents by rubbing the snakes with cotton swabs, took all these measurements to see which one they were most interested in. So it's like a Thunderdome experiment without any beef. It's just purely smelling.
Yeah, I feel like we need an alternative name for this sort of. It's some sort of like choice buffet test or something.
The choice buffet smell dome.
I don't know. We need a catchy name for these ones that isn't Thunderdome, because there's no fighting.
I think Smell Dome is quite good.
Smell Dome. Yeah. Smell Dome wouldn't cover all the ones that we've covered that has like, does the lizard like this bug, or does the lizard like corn?
Well, yeah, the bug thing though, from the bug's perspective, that is a Thunderdome.
That's true. If the bug's alive, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a grossly unfair Thunderdome, but I suppose that is in keeping. Yeah.
Thunderdomes aren't always fair, Ben. That's the kind of nature of Thunderdomes.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, long story short, they got two smells to choose from. And they measured how much time they were interested in both things. We don't need to go too much into it. But essentially, Eastern garter snakes performed more long tongue flicks to their own marked scent than to the marked scent of a familiar conspecific. So they're spending more time investigating their own smell, which has been slightly adulterated, than they are with a similarly adulterated smell of another snake that isn't them. So they're more interested in their own smell.
Yes. I think the other sort of aspect that's really, really interesting. So what you're talking about, these marked smells, this sort of adulterated scent. It's what essentially it is they've got the smell from the snake and they've added a bit of olive oil to it. Olive oil as being a scent which they're going to be unfamiliar with, but it's to try and separate whether the snakes are investigating something entirely novel versus something that they should be familiar with their own scent. It's sort of because if it was pure just exploration, you'd expect them to go for the most novel scent, right?
Yeah.
But if you've got that intermixed with their own scent, it sort of balances out the novelness, the novelty, that's the word, between the two competing things. And then you can also compare when it isn't marked with when it doesn't have olive oil, when it does have olive oil, to see if that's actually making a difference.
Yeah. It should trigger a bit of curiosity.
Yes.
Something slightly new.
Because what you're saying with the comparison of their own smell that's been marked with olive oil versus a familiar conspecific that's been marked with olive oil being different is you didn't see that difference when the olive oil was not present.
Yeah.
So there does need to be something to sort of prompt, or at least in this case, it seems like there needs to be something to sort of prompt that investigation.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, if it was their own scent versus the scent of a familiar conspecific, without any marks, they did actually seem to be more interested in the familiar conspecific slightly.
Slightly, yeah.
Yeah, which is what you're describing. But yeah, if they have their own smell, modified, that is more interesting than the modified smell of another snake.
Yes.
And also, they were more curious about their own scent if it had been marked with olive oil compared to the olive oil alone.
Yep.
And they were, and was it not the case that they were also more interested in, the mark, so their own smell mixed with olive oil than their own smell on its own?
Yes. So basically, adding this olive oil to their own smell sort of prompted more investigation.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what you were talking about at the beginning of like, okay, something's changed here. It's familiar, but something's changed. That might be the most interesting smell of all, right? It's to do with me, but something's wrong. Something's different.
It's like if you're a little bit unwell and you have a strange toilet experience, you might notice the smell is a little unexpected.
It might smell like olive oil.
It might. That's the best case scenario. But yeah, so Eastern garter snakes, they seem to be more interested in their own smell. So yeah, they actually pass. They pass this self-recognition test with all its caveats.
With all its caveats, yes. Which the paper does a really good job at highlighting. It sort of does a breakdown so thoroughly of like, okay, this doesn't mean this might not mean this. It's
Yeah. Do you know what else I really liked about this paper, which I thought was really frank and honest and just being good science, is they said in the very last sentence of their introduction was, as chemosensory self-recognition could be beneficial to snakes generally, but could also depend on ecological conditions, we had no specific predictions as to whether or not we would find a difference between the two species. So they're just like, straight up, we don't really know what to expect.
This is exploratory. We're not expecting anything. Yeah. We're doing it to cover some bases because if it pops up in 2, that'd be crazy interesting. If it doesn't pop up in 2, we don't really know which one would make more sense.
Yeah, but I just think they deserve a bit of credit for not giving into the temptation to be like, because garter snakes are more social, we expected them to smell stuff. It's like, well, no, you didn't, and that's cool that you didn't. So respect.
Well, royal pythons then. What's up with them?
Yeah,
what's
they
going
don't
on
do
there?
anything.
They don't care.
They don't care. They're above it all.
Yeah,
they're above it all.
No differences in
royal
any
pythons,
of the paired tests.
Yeah, they lack the same interest in their own scent.
Yeah.
Which they talk about a little bit. It may be that they're unable to discriminate between the scents, so they might not be able to tell the difference. Or more likely, possibly, they just simply lack the motivation to explore them differently. They might not have any reason to care about the scent of
really
themselves
liked
or
the
conspecifics.
line that they said that the royal pythons may have a more rigid concept of self, not self, that does not extend to environmental stimuli. So they're so self-assured in themselves that they completely dissociate the environment from who they are as individuals. That's my favorite explanation. Is this?
Yeah, that's
this
kind of what I was
stoic
getting at earlier.
royal python. I am me. Everything else is not me.
Yeah, it's like the very notion that they could have a smell in the environment just like doesn't exist as a concept.
That's
to them.
not me. That as soon as it sheds from my body, it's not me.
Yeah. But yeah, they don't know why. It could be the social thing. Garter snakes, they gather together, right? So it could be beneficial to be able to, first of all, know your own smell, but also so you can recognize that communal area you've been to before.
Yep.
But also, if you're able to recognize familiar individuals, that's great because you know that you maybe they have a relationship with those individuals. They've socialized with them in the past. They want to socialize with them again. Or it could be because, particularly when you look at the sort of marked scent being more interesting, it could be, okay, I recognize that individual's scent, but it's different than normal. That could indicate that another individual maybe is ill. This is kind of like one step removed, just sort of like thinking about it, why it might be beneficial, but it could be good to recognize that an individual snake smells different than normal. Maybe it's ill and you want to avoid it. So there's lots of potential reasons why this might be useful. We don't know what they are. Just we know that they are able to sort of distinguish them. And I do like the fact that they're really keen. They're like, we avoid attributing higher order abilities such as self-awareness or consciousness to snakes partly because they don't believe the results of this test provide evidence for these skills. But they do think it strengthens the argument that some reptiles can self-recognize.
Yes, I really like that sentence too. It was very just clean, like, this is opening more doors for possibilities, not closing them. I did want to sort of highlight too the whole, like, own scent with mark might also be that whole, well, it smells like me, so maybe it's closely related individual, but not, because we know from, like, rattlesnakes and stuff, there was a tendency for staying nearer closer related individuals and stuff along those lines, so it might be indicative of that sort of stuff. Yeah, fascinating paper, really. It's simultaneously frustrating because I want to know more. I want a mirror test that works better, essentially, but also everything they've done and the whole discussion surrounding it is so damn fascinating. Yes, please, more of this. This is great.
Yeah. It is really cool. Yeah, I hope we have more stuff to do with this and more species. And I just really like that royal pythons don't care. I respect that a lot. Just do you, royal pythons.
They're fundamentally themselves. That's what I will choose to believe and take from this paper for now. With no evidence to back it up.
So, there we go. Garter snakes appear to be self-aware based on this scent-based...
Self-recognizing,
self-recognizing. Based on this sort of scent-based self-recognition test, royal pythons, not so much. But yeah, cool paper. So, have you got any other business for this week, Ben?
I do not, no.
Okay. So, I had one piece, just to talk about, somebody in the UK has been given the King's Gallantry Medal for fighting a crocodile. So there's these two twins. They were swimming in Mexico in June 2021. Mm-hmm. They're not kids. They're like, I think they were sort of like late 20s when this happened, these two women. And they basically were in Mexico on holiday, having a swim, and her sister got attacked by a crocodile. And when the crocodile attacked, she decided to start punching it. She basically attacked the crocodile back while it was latched onto her sister, managed to deter it from killing and eating her sister. And apparently that's enough to get you the King's Gallantry Medal in the UK, which is like an order. I don't really know what it is, but they're assuming the king has something to do with it.
Shiny piece of metal.
You get a shiny piece of metal from the king. And and I mean, by the sounds of it, she did save her sister's life from a crocodile, which is pretty hardcore and pretty crazy.
That is quite impressive. Crocodiles don't mess around.
Yeah, I mean...
So what type of crocodile would it have been?
She got bitten in Mexico.
American crocs don't go that far south, do they?
Do they not?
Maybe.
Morelet's crocodile is known as the Mexican crocodile, so it could well have been that. They don't have saltwater crocodiles.
No.
I don't think they mentioned specifically what type it was, but apparently it grabbed her and dragged her under. So
they can't get 3 meters in length. That's a big croc. That could they wouldn't mess around.
No, and apparently after the attack, which was now nearly 3 years ago, Melissa, who's the twin who was attacked, she had an open fracture to her wrist, severe bite wounds to her abdomen, and many to her leg and foot. And Georgia, who was the one fighting the crocodile, she was bitten on the hand. Which, it just sounds absolutely mental. They were on a guided tour as well. Apparently they were looking at the bioluminescence, so presumably it was at night. Swimming at night, crocodile-infested waters. Not infested. I don't know. The crocodiles have got every right to be there.
Crocodile-blessed waters.
Crocodile-blessed waters. Yeah. Crocodile-rich waters. And
infused.
They nearly paid the ultimate price, but she got away with it, and she got the King's Gallantry Medal to boot. So there you go.
Wow. There you go.
Yeah. If you're going to get attacked by a crocodile, make sure your unbelievably badass and hardcore twin sister is there to witness it.
Yes. Or maybe it was a tiny, tiny crocodile, but I suspect not.
Yeah, maybe it was just one crocodile was too big for its boots and everyone's exaggerating. But so, yeah, I mean, her injuries were pretty severe.
Yeah, it's
so there we go.
Mm-hmm.
I have got one other piece of any other business just to say thanks to our newest patron. So thank you, Paul J. Gurley.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you want to become our Patreon too, you can at patreon.com/herphighlights. That is the best way to support the podcast. And we are supremely grateful to all of you that do. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think I've got any other business beyond that, Ben, if you haven't.
Nope. I think it's just to wrap it up.
Great. So yeah, if you want to get in touch with us, you can. If you want to ask a question or if you've got a correction, something we said which wasn't quite right, herphighlights@gmail.com. We're on social media. I think that's just about it. So thank you for listening.
Yeah, thanks for listening.